Hello, hello. Welcome to another Humpday Q&A with the wobbly Scott. Here we are, another week. Let's go through the intros and we get to some questions and some good old chatting.
Yes,
and
while I make
see
sure
where
that the
we can
word
go.
Flutter shows on my shirt. There we go.
You have to,
sort of.
There we go. You have to brand awareness, something like that.
Yes.
All right. Welcome to Humpday Q&A, where me and Scott talk gibberish all day long. So, my name is Simon Loafer, Flutter community leader, CTO of Dev Angels London, and you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Links are in the description. Scott.
My name is Scott Stahl. I am also a community leader. I am one of the organizers of GDG Cleveland. I also write code at Dev Angels London, and Simon and I talk gibberish every day. We just do it in front of you on Wednesdays.
And also we have our question magician, Randall, in the background. Randall, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Randall Schwartz. I'm a 40-year veteran of the computer industry, but recently I've been focusing on Dart and Flutter, and I became a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert, which means that I'm specially vetted to be able to answer questions with ease.
It means you're very, very special.
I'm one of 4,000 Flutter GDEs in the world, so it's not like there's maybe that's total GDEs. Flutter.
How
GDEs
much does that pay?
It pays zero. It's unpaid DevRel essentially.
Yeah.
And speaking of getting paid, I'm between gigs right now, so if you've got a lead, let me know. Would really appreciate it.
And I'm sure you can reach out to him on Twitter at Randall Schwartz.
Yep.
So we're just going to bring up our things and where is it? I'll find it in a second. There we go. Scott.
There we go. Alrighty, do's and don'ts. Be nice, be decent, be respectful to each other. If you want to do otherwise, go to Reddit. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive. Don't advertise or promote your service. Don't keep reposting your same question again and again and again. We will just keep moving you to the bottom of the list again and again and again. So, harassment of any kind is not tolerated. Come on, this one's common sense. No incels, no bigotry, no misogyny, no racism.
All the horrible
all
stuff.
That kind of nonsense. And remember, we share ban lists in this community. The people who run all the chats and the Slacks and the Discords all know each other. So if you disappear from one, odds are you're not going to be able to log into any of the others either.
So play nice or forever hold your peace. So I think what has been happening over the past week, I don't know. So much has been going on.
Okay, in the world of Flutter, let's limit it to the world of Flutter because I'm in America.
I mean, right? Like there's things that we don't talk politics here, but there's some crazy stuff going on in America for sure. I think the world's seen that, and the world does not understand what the hell's going on there.
America doesn't understand what the hell's going on here. Anyway, so what has been going on in the world of Flutter? Well, one of the things we can check out is trending repos.
Yeah, I was just looking at the trending repos at the moment.
In Dart.
There's some really interesting stuff going down. There's I've seen this like a lightweight free Spotify cross-platform client that someone's been building. Maybe I'll bring this up on stream. It's quite cool. It's called SpoTube. Should I share it? Let's see if I can share it.
Go right ahead.
If I can find the right button. There we go. That's what I want. A tab. A tab sounds good. See if this can get this up on stream. Hey, look at this. So this is Kigoroy. I can't even say it. I'm terrible at names. But anyway, yeah, SpoTube. This looks cool. It's got a lot of love recently. Open source. Anonymous and guest logins. Nice. Lots of platforms supported. This is what I like to see, like Flutter products that cross the divide, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's some really cool things you can do. Looks like someone else has been curating a list of open source Flutter apps. I don't know what this is. We can put these in links in the chat if anyone's wondering.
Yeah.
Also, don't get your questions coming in. I'll drop this one in, and I've also got, if I can find it, the other one. It says, there we go.
Let's see here.
So what's this? So this is okay. So this guy's actually gone through and curated a list of open source Flutter apps in different areas. That's kind of interesting, actually. You know, if you want to start like health and fitness, you could go look at some of the other packages out there and apps. It's quite cool. It's really helpful.
I was going to say this is like the It's All Widgets. It used to be both a podcast and enumeration of Flutter projects, mostly open source, but a lot of them are proprietary now, and I'm kind of disappointed for not having a filter like that. I mean, you can filter it by searching, but you can't. I was thinking it was going to be more about really being true to the open source community spirit, and that's not.
I think I always thought it was just showcasing Flutter in general.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Alrighty, we got another one over here.
Self-hosted photo and video backup tool. So this is like an open source Google Photos. Oh, it is. How about that?
Ooh, cool.
That's kind of cool. So, you know, if you don't want to go with the big G or others, go for a self-hosted one. Start up a server indoors and away you go. It's a good set of features as well. Nice. I'll stick that in the chat as well. I've not tried any of these. This is all.
I found another interesting one here.
Go for it.
This is also in the list. It's Flutter tips and tricks, which, you know, sounds hokey. You always hear about Flutter tips and tricks, using expanded and other things like that. But this is a little different. Using where clauses in maps, merging maps, sorting generics. A lot of this is just Dart, which is not a bad idea. So many people focus on the Flutter framework that they forget to really learn basic Dart. You know, anything from, you know, snapshots, streams, iterables, controllers, sets. You know, this has nothing to do with Flutter. This is all, I'm sorry, not the whole thing, but those have to do with Dart. And unfortunately, it is Dart itself tends to be overlooked. Everyone's so worried about what the latest package is or what the state management is. You know, do you know all the functions you can use on a string? Do you know all the different ways you can manipulate a map? Probably not.
It's kind of interesting.
I strongly recommend that people at least once a month until it really just starts being boring to pull up Dart Core and read the entire protocol for list, map, set, and string, because those are the four fundamental data types that you're going to be playing with. Maybe num too, but that's never as interesting. But at least list, map, and string, or list, map, and set, because the collections are useful. And then, if you have more time, go look at Dart collection, which gives you a whole layer of really cool things you can do. And that's also maintained by the Google team. So it's not like somebody's third-party package to add more things to collections. There are a few of those in the pub as well.
I mean, it's just so much information and documentation. It's a really good documentation source. So api.dart.dev, linked below.
Yep.
Not to mention, like, obviously, like the api.flutter.dev also links to that kind of content. If you want the latest, here's a little tip for you. If you want the latest documentation, that's for the master branch. You can actually go to master-api.flutter.dev, and so that would be the bleeding edge documentation. And there's actually also, if you're working with plugins, there's api.flutter/javadoc, which gives you the Java doc or for the Android shell, and then there's Objective-C doc, which gives you the iOS documentation for the integration shell. So both of those can be handy when trying to work with the native side of things. When we're just talking about, obviously Scott's just had to disappear there, but when we were just talking about that, it reminded me of I've been doing gists for ages, where I just like tweet out something, I write a little gist. So there's lots of tips and tricks. If you go to gist.github.com/slightfoot, you'll find a bunch of the stuff that I've made, and it's not kept up to date. There's no expectation that it will work. Just warning you now. But something that someone I think someone favorited a tweet that I had this linked on a little while ago. So some people didn't realize you could do this. So this is kind of nice. So I just wanted to share this. Hang on, let me get rid of the banner. There we go. So I can make this bigger as well. There we go. It's probably big enough. So defer initialization of your UI based on a background service. So this is just an example of this that you might have. So you do your run app with Material app, whatever it is, and you have some service that takes some time to start up, like check the login or something. And inside of your entry point for your app or your screen, you can wrap your Material app with this, whatever. I've implemented this custom widget called defer init. And what it does is it waits for this async task to finish before continuing with the UI. So at the very beginning, it shows empty widget, whatever that is. You can put whatever you want in there. And then once this async task finishes, it displays whatever widget it returns back. So this can be really handy when starting things up. And what it does is, under the hood, it does this rendering binding defer first frame, and then once your feature is complete, it does allow first frame. And what this allows you to do is basically hold the native OS splash screen for your app until you're ready to render something on the screen. So you can wait until you've gone to the network and got the user status, or are they logged in or something like that, before you show the UI. So that way you don't get this UI that opens up. I mean, it's quite often it happens. The UI opens up and then it blinks over to being like logged in, right? Once the feature completes or something like that, or you have some other sort of mechanism that's in place that it just never seems to be right. So the defer initial frame is one way of tackling that, which might work for you. It means you get the native splash screen and then get into the app when it's ready. It also allows you to handle some error cases and things like that. Whereas you can also do that same thing can be done by making your main function async and then doing a waiting there. But if there's any errors that happen in that point, it's very hard to capture them or to tell the user that an error occurred. You have to do like run app with a special error screen. It's kind of janky. But anyway. So just want to throw that one out there.
All right. Interesting question real quick. Is Dart a general purpose language, or can it be? So if it was a general purpose language, you would be able to do things like, I don't know, full stack. So
short, yeah. So
people are doing it.
I find myself doing this more and more nowadays, and that is writing tooling. So if I'm building an app and I need to do certain things in it that are more around maintaining the data or doing some extraneous resources to the main part, that's tooling. It might be just helping you to run tests and doing various like little things like that. You end up writing them as Dart packages, like Dart scripts, Dart CLI scripts, so that you can run some commands and spin up a database and run it locally or whatever you're trying to do. So there's definitely at that point I'd say it's general purpose because you can do whatever you want with it, right? And the core library in Dart is quite good. Like you've got a lot of functionality built in.
For that, I'd also recommend. I have thousands of Perl scripts that do all my hard work, all my heavy lifting, all my routine lifting, and I've been slowly rewriting them into essentially command line Dart as part of an exercise to learn more about Dart, learn more about its edges when running on command line. And one of the key packages I use for this is called DCLI. It's in the package, it's in the pub. And it basically understands how to do a pound bang line that has DCLI in it. So you can actually just create a script, but ultimately it allows you to compile it down with the packages that it needs into a single binary that's a full standalone binary that you can even move from one machine to another, kind of like compiling a Go application down.
Oh, so Dart CLI, right. So
yeah,
so you can put
incredible.
so you can put a shebang line at the top of your script, and it will
Yep.
execute with the Dart this Dart DCLI.
Yes.
So it treats it as like a scripting language like PHP or anything else, Ruby.
Right.
Whatever. Nice.
But then you can also go through the compile step, and then it becomes a binary that you can then not. I mean, and what's great is, of course, Perl always had a startup time, but these things have like a 0 startup time. They're just boom, and they're running. So it's actually improving some of my performance on things because I don't have the startup time of Perl loading all its libraries.
What's also nice about this is just that development environment. And also, if you want to make a quick change, you make the change, you run, and it just runs again. Like there's, I don't know.
Yep.
Mate, I don't know. Maybe I'm just spoiled. Maybe I'm just like, I just Dart for everything now.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it boils down
the other
to
thing
really.
Another thing DCLI comes with is a lot of interesting routines for doing things like recursively copy a file tree and stuff. Those are all in the DCLI.
Oh, really?
library.
That's nice. That's really nice.
So a lot of shell-like things that you would do, you can also do direct.
Oh, I think we lost a Randall.
I already see a question asked twice. I'll see. You're on the list.
Uh-oh.
So you're back. Let's carry on here. Let's see what else we got. Should we start answering some questions? See what we got.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this one is in here twice.
Stream versus polling versus silent notifications to update app state, cost-wise, if using Firebase. I mean,
silent notification.
So I mean, it says using Firebase, right? So silent notifications are push notifications. I assume that's what he's talking about. Polling is obviously going off to request new data from Firestore or something running in Firebase, and then streaming, that you can do streaming requests for documents. I assume that's where he's going with this. And he means cost money wise. Well, push notifications don't necessarily cost anything in that sense, but they're very hard to work with. Like you can easily also DDoS yourself. So, in terms of you send out one push notification to 10,000 users and 10,000 users tap on that notification to enter your app, and your app logs them all in, tries to log them all in at the same time, and that's it. Your server just goes poof. So push notifications, as much as they're great, you've got to be careful with them. You'll be surprised. Also, the user can disable them. They can, the user, if you can annoy the user, they can uninstall your app. Like they're really useful if used for the right things. So be careful, be cool. You've been warned. That's it. Polling, cost wise, the cost of polling versus streaming is it's pretty much the same if it comes to, you're talking about Firestore, because you're getting if you're getting updates you don't need, then you're going to be making more requests, more document reads, which is going to cost you more, right? But also you can say the same thing for polling, right? Like if you're polling and you're retrieving a document all the time, then you've definitely got more that you're spending, right? So always push. So you've got polling or push. These are the two mechanisms that we talk about. Polling is always a poor substitute for push, right? If you can be told that something's changed, is always a better thing than saying, have you changed? Have you changed? Have you changed? Right? It's the other side of that is, if you're using the other, frankly speaking, you can do more effort if you put more effort into say back-end Dart, like running it in the cloud, then you're definitely going to spend less, right? Because you're making the backend that's specific to your needs. And then you can do things like WebSockets and streaming, a la the last boring show that came out. I'm gonna just hint that because that's what we're talking about on there. But
Yep. Cool.
That's what I say. Anything else from anyone? I just whittled on for too long, probably.
I was going to say, I think your point about having to do polling is that also you're having to fetch your entire data load whether you need it or not, right? Because you have to get the thing.
If you're doing with Firestore, yeah, for certain. I don't think Firestore has. I don't think Firestore has like a query if not changed kind of deal, if none match. You can, however, obviously with HTTP, you can do polling, and then you can get 3 or 4 not modified. So you just get like the response saying that nothing's changed, no data has been transmitted, and that can be slightly not optimal.
Now that you're digging into databases and such, there's an interesting question here. Somebody has an idea to combine Shelf and ISAR. Roberto, so clients can send they want clients to be able to send requests to retrieve, insert, and delete records, but imagine one client deletes a record and another one apparently is editing the record.
Yeah.
That would probably be bad if they were happening at the same time.
Well, ISAR supports ACID, right? And you have transaction support. So you can do things with transactions. So they're atomic, the operations you're doing. I don't know what, if you're doing like, if you're just doing one SQL statement, it's atomic. It's the last one that wins. The person that tries to update, if it's been deleted, will just fail. You can't do an update on something that's been deleted, right? So, but that's how you handle your failure case. That's how you handle what happens when something goes wrong, right? The other side of this is, you've got ISAR, the underlying system below ISAR, that's LMDB/MDBX, supports multi-version concurrency control, MVCC. And that means that you can never get like your database getting corrupted by multiple threads trying to use it at the same time. The mechanism they use with versioning. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea. In short, it's not a bad idea. This happens all the time. It just means that the second one, when they try and edit it, would get an error come back saying, sorry, record doesn't exist.
Yep.
That's more about how you handle that on the client side, because what you could say is the client can then get back and go, okay, I'm going to create that record now, right? Mm-hmm. And then it becomes, then you reissue the request to the create request, for instance.
Cool. Alrighty. So, Randall.
Yes.
Looks like you need to answer a question.
Oh, yes. I was just looking at that in the list. So,
yeah.
Somebody in
and
Stack
then there's
Overflow.
A follow-up. Well, let's make sure everybody hears the question first.
Yes. Randall, yesterday you've mentioned on an SO answer, that's Stack Overflow, that super init state has to be called before anything else in an override. I agree as best practice, but curious where this could go wrong. Well, first off, this is defined by the people who coded up the routine. They understand whether the children should come first or they should run first when they're designing the routine. For a init state, it was decided that the super needs to be called absolutely first to make sure that that whole init state happens for all your parents first in recursive order before you do anything to add to that. Sorry, what?
In the inheritance order of parent
inheritance, right. Sorry, inheritance, right. Not widget order. Okay.
Yeah.
Now for dispose, which is your later question, as a follow-up, would this all apply to super dispose? Yes, super dispose is by definition to come last in your dispose override. And that's because, again, whoever authored dispose decided that the kids needed to take care of themselves first before going ahead and walking up the inheritance tree for dispose.
Another way to put this, it's beginner friendly. If you're building a house, right now the super class is the class that the one that your widget is based on, right? So you got super and the one that, and now you've got one that's based on it because you're extending it. If you're going to build a house, You can't build the second floor first. You can't hang it in the air. The second floor is based on the first floor. So you have to initialize the first floor and then initialize the second floor. Now, when you're tearing it down, you can't tear the super out first. It's not going to work that way. Okay, so you have to tear the child down first, the second floor, and then you tear down the thing that it's based on.
Yeah.
And that's why in dispose, the order is reversed.
The example that I always give is if you needed to read something from the parent, let's say I needed to read a stream from the parent class. If it didn't call the super init first, it may not be initialized when I want to read it if I put my read before the super. And the same goes for teardown. If it tries to tear itself down, but I'm still listening to it, that's also going to break. So it's all about that order, right? As Scott was saying. All right, let's see what else we got here.
What is there no... Oh, why is there not a constant date time constructor?
Amazingly enough, he just retracted that question in the list. Oh, he's got a better one coming up.
No, it's Roberto. You're
question.
spamming. What's going on here?
He deleted the previous one though.
It may not have realized it's been posted. I don't know.
Oh.
Anyway, it got deleted in the YouTube chat, but it doesn't come through with us for it's been deleted.
Okay, yeah, we're seeing it twice.
Okay, that's fine. Anyway, why is there constant time? I have no idea. It's because it can't be made constant, I'm assuming.
Well, no, you said why. So, yep. And yeah, we realized that you meant why. So let me see here. I'm just pulling up IntelliJ for a moment.
I'll be honest, normally these things happen because the constructors are doing some logic to verify the parameters. And in that situation, they can't be made constant because it's a runtime execution of code that produces the result. It's not literal in its interpretation.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what the problem is. So, well, I know at least one of the problems. You can say 13th month in the constructor, and it will automatically mean next year, first month. So there are some mods going on, things like that.
I'm literally
so there's
just
some calculations happening. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see if I can come up on the screen. I just went to the date time constructor. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at it too.
Yeah, so here's the date time. Where's our constructor? Yeah, so this runs the internal constructor. So strictly speaking, this would be fine. But on top of that, if there's any variables that can change in here that are not final, right, including the superclass, that's fine. And then it also won't be made final. But then we can have a look at internal here. Static const. External, that's fine. With value. This is all implemented in C++, I think, actually. To local. I didn't see internal. Maybe it's further down. Here we go. See, it's probably more to do with the way that it's been implemented in the C code. Like this is a function that returns an instance because it needs to allocate some stuff in the native code. So it could be all these external functions can use it. Like the difference function is not implemented in Dart. This means it's external to Dart.
So even if what you're doing in Dart could be constant, it's relying on something that can't.
Yeah. So this is a runtime thing. If it's because this does some logic, right, in this function, right? But if it was just set in those fields, then yeah, it would be totally have the ability not. If it was just set in the fields, I can see these are getters. There's no fields here, right? There's just not that type of object. Probably for performance. Like you're going to get more performance out of it being the way it is rather than being constant. What you can do if you want a constant string, if you want a constant date time, is to have like a string version of your date time in whatever model it is, and then interpret that at runtime and cache it inside your model or something like that. So do a datetime.parse when you first access the date timestamp. I don't see any build benefit. I mean, like, obviously, if the datetime itself is not constant, you can't make a model that contains it constant. You can't make a parent data structure constant. So if it's stopping you from shipping a bunch of data within your app and making it constant, I would just go choose a different const literal parameter, so some base type like a string, and then interpret it at runtime to be a date timestamp.
Alrighty. Here's an interesting one. Integration testing. And it's a little more complicated than that. A recommended strategy to integrate a web app, and it gets better. Cookies, file uploads, native JS dependencies running on iPad is no option. I'm not an iOS person, so I'm not sure why. And to wait or use alternatives. Where's VGV when we need them?
I'll be honest with you, I've never run any integration tests on Flutter Web. I don't even, I'm guessing it's possible. I mean, you can run, I've just never tried it. I don't even know what would happen.
You know, it's interesting because I've seen a lot of people that skip integration tests in Flutter for various reasons, talking about all the different ways they can go wrong, or the test can look good and things can still.
Any test is better than having no test. Because you can always fix a test if it's wrong, right? Like the point here is if you don't have a test, then what are you going to do?
Apparently, I have a lot of tickets to write this afternoon, folks.
I'm really confused by this. Apparently, the integration test package discontinued 14 months ago. I thought they renamed it to integration test. Because it was called E2E. Then they got renamed to integration test. What is this? Is this an official package? No, that's not an official package. This is the official package. Deprecated. Oh, because it's now part of the framework.
It's in the SDK.
Yeah. Okay. So we should be able to find that. If I go to flutter.dev, and do we have integration test library? There you go. Yeah.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Oh, did Jimmy tell us that? I thought there was some.
Considering the lag, Jimmy, you're probably seeing right now that we just found it. But actually, we found it half a second before your message came in.
Who knows? I'm just.
No support for web so far.
How many? It must be. I tell you what, it must be in the flutter.dev documentation now. Should we have a look? Let's have a look. Integration testing.
Put the question down here. There we go. How to use the integration test package. You know, what are the odds that if you click on that, it's going to take you to the deprecation page?
I just did it, and it doesn't. It takes you to the integrated documentation in GitHub, which is how you include it now. Do you know what? I might have to go through and fix some stuff up because I don't think I'm doing this in a few places now. Should probably do that.
And Jimmy, don't worry about it. The lag is normal. It's the StreamYard software we're using.
It's just the streaming in general. Flutter Drive. I mean, can you? Because this is running on. Is this running? Yeah, you go web. There you go. Enable web support. Download runtime. Driver. Bam. D web server. There you go. Okay. There you go. So there's your hint. I mean, did you say how, or was it why, or anyway? I'll drop that in the chat. Before we jump on to another question, I wanted to. So first of all,
the screen scrolled. Sorry.
Sorry. First of all, let's just say we want to make sure you enter Q in front of your question in the chat. Otherwise, we may not see them. Like there was one I noticed back then that someone posted that didn't have a Q in front of it. So please make sure you have a Q in front of it. Otherwise, we might miss it. And then you'll be complaining about why we didn't get to your question by the end of the stream. And it's because we didn't see it. Okay.
Yep.
So let me just ping through a couple more here. Hang on. I saw.
I've got something lined up here. Oh, okay.
Flutter is primarily a single-threaded solution with the exception of isolates. Is there any plan to move async code to something comparable to coroutines? They are. Async and await are coroutines. That's how it works. It's not single-threaded in that sense, right? Any coroutine is single-threaded. It's a routine that works on one thread, and it works with a yield scenario. Basically, when you await, you're yielding back to the operating system to schedule something else. Yeah, it's totally already there. That's exactly what they are. When you make it a function that's async, it becomes a coroutine.
Yep. Alrighty.
And
let's see here.
Hold on. Oh. There's another one asked by the same person. Speaking of dispose, what should the method for async dispose method? What method for async dispose methods? For instance, notifications that a widget has been closed. Notifications that widget has been closed. This works with running the application, but fails in unit tests. You should never have a dispose method that's async.
Yeah.
There you go. It's a synchronous mechanism, so you cannot just make any function async and expect it to work asynchronously. The caller is what has to wait for it, right? So yeah, and you need to describe your scenario a bit more about what you're trying to do with disposal, like this notification business, because then maybe it can give you a better direction as to how to achieve it. Okay. I think your microphone has gone up a bit, Randall. Maybe just say something.
Just nodding to agree.
Oh, okay. Maybe
I do that sometimes when I'm muted. I just kind of nod because I say, "Yeah, that's right. I agree." Thumbs up.
Okay. Well.
Alrighty.
Go on.
Moving on. Creating a fixed list and growable list in Dart. So that's a basic Dart question. So if you go to dart.dev right here, and then you just go over to the docs, to the language, there's a tour. Control F, list. Everything you need to know is right here.
It takes you to the documentation. There's actually a constructor, a name constructor called filled. That's how you create a fixed list. Or you can say on any iterable to list growable false.
There's growable false. Yep.
Or list dot immutable, and I think list dot.
Now this would be interesting. If you made a constant list, the contents of the list can be changed, but the number of elements, is that going to be constant and unchangeable? Because
no,
that's
you can't change a constant list. You can't change a constant list.
Right, but you can change the contents, can't you?
Nope. That's what that is spelling there in the middle. Const 1, 2, 3, and if you try and set the middle variable, which is currently 2, the value of 2 to 1, it will cause an error.
Gotcha.
But it's the same thing. Like what you can do is you want to return back. You want to wrap any list in. There's a constructor. Name constructor called list.unmodifiable.
Mm-hmm.
And that constructor, if you wrap any list with that, it will put an interface in front, which means if you try any of the right routines to like change a value or change the length, it will throw an exception. So that's also.
So Simon, once again, I have to keep asking the beginners questions. Somebody's got to. If you have an unmodifiable list and you need to change something, what are you supposed to do? I mean, especially because everyone's pushing for immutability. But how do you change a list if it's immutable? How do you change anything that's immutable?
Make a new list from the other list. List.of, whatever the other objects. And now you've got a new list that's mutable that you can change and do whatever you want with.
So almost sounds like a copy with.
It is. It's list.of or list. There's two. So it'd be
list.from.
List.from and list.of are two slightly different routines that do the same thing. One is type safe and continues the type of the child element. The other one is dynamic and creates a dynamic list. Be careful which one you use. You have been warned.
If the word
the one-
dynamic appears in your code, you're doing it wrong. This is not JavaScript.
I also, since we're talking about immutability, I want to put in a plug once again for that really wonderful fast immutable collections package in the
Pull it up right now.
It's really slick. In fact, I answered a question earlier today on Stack Overflow using it. Guy had a bunch of, like, say, 5-element lists, and he wanted to make sure they all had the same value. And I said, well, here's one way to do it. You simply pass each of those lists into an I list from fast immutable collections, which makes them deep equal as opposed to shallow equal, which means they can become map keys. And then you count them the same way you would count letters in a string. You know, you have a map that you increment by 1 for each time you see the letter A or anything, and it will just work. If all of them are the same, you'll get the total number will all be in one bucket, and it'll say, I got 17 of those. And if any of them are different, you get multiple keys, multiple slots, and you know that some of the lists were different from other lists. It's pretty slick.
This package, it produces immutable collections, obviously. It makes them very easy to use. The way you use them is pretty much the way you would use any list, because it handles all the differences under the hood. And the way it's been done, Mark Glassberg is an old-time engineer. He's been around for quite a while. Did a lot of work in C. Actually was one of the first people I worked with in Flutter way back, beta? Or was Mark involved in alpha?
I think it was alpha.
Might have been alpha. Mark's been around a long time. Yeah, and he worked very hard on this to make sure that it would be very highly performant. So there's a reason it's called fast.
We also had, I wanted to mention that I always mention this, and I think it's something we should mention every stream. I'm going to pop it in the chat. There's a link there to this article, Understanding Constraints.
Yes.
So constraints go down, size go up, parents set permission. So Mark reviewed that past with everyone, a bunch of us that were in the community at the time, and we gave a lot of feedback and input into this. This is like examples showing you how the layout system works and explain how constraints work, and it gives you like a little taste of where the common occurrences of things that go wrong and how you fix them. And there's just huge numbers of examples in here, so definitely worth checking out.
And for those who are new to this, you might not have realized what you're looking at right there. The Flutter team got permission from Mark to include his article in their documentation.
I'll let this
Okay,
be.
so that's how significant this article is. It's now part of the docs.
Yeah. So this is the phrase that you always want to remember. Constraints go down, sizes go up, parent sets position. If you can remember that is the layout rules for Flutter, right?
And one other thing that really doesn't make sense until you think about it. Constraints go down, right? So what you can be goes down the tree. Sizes of what you need to be go up, and then the parent aligns, sets a position. Now, here's the interesting thing. How does your child widget know where it is on the screen? And the answer is it doesn't.
You have to look.
There's no way it can know.
So
well,
you can look at the render object and do global
there's no
to
easy way.
Local to global.
Local to global.
Local position 0, which would be the top left of your child widget, and it'll give you the global position. If you give an ancestor, it would be the global position relative to that ancestor, relative to the parent, or some other widget up the tree. But to be honest, if I said that, actually, we had this chat the other day, and I want to bring this up now. So if you're in the position where you need to go get the size of another widget, you're doing it wrong. That's literally, so that's the mindset of UI with hierarchy, right? That's the kind of non-declarative approach to doing the UI stuff. The point here is build happens to set out the widgets, then layout occurs to lay out the widgets. Layout is where you want to be doing those things, not during build, right? So at some point during like an on-click or some other sort of either based on user input or during build that you're trying to get the size of a widget, I can't think of one good case. There are a few, but for all practical purposes, you're doing it wrong. What you should be doing is using custom single child layout or custom multi-child layout or a custom paint, whatever, or custom render objects to do the layout. If you cannot get your layout to be a combination of what already exists in widgets, doing it yourself with during layout is the correct way to do it.
Say to follow on that just a second. Yes, what you're talking about is really the proper way. If you ever do need to have a widget, depending on the position and size of another widget, I highly recommend the package called Boxy, B-O-X-Y. And it don't use it as your first tool. That's not right. Go learn it the proper way first. And only when it's absolutely necessary, go look at Boxy, because it can do some really remarkable things.
So
you're basically in charge of the whole layer. Yeah.
Yeah, but Boxy is the same as just basically pre-supplying some custom layouts for you, right? So you can go make this is how this works. Boxy row and Boxy column are just other layouts, right? That you could go make render objects and do these things. This is all part of the remit of Flutter, but it's just a deeper level, right? But the point here is that a lot of the time you don't need to do that if there's already support for it. So if you're trying to do some of these special easy things that you want to do like this, then you normally want to do alongside of one of these Boxy things. So you can see here that my Boxy delegate, and here's a custom box layout. This is very, very similar to custom single child layout and custom multi-child layout. You give it a delegate, you give it children with IDs, and then you can use those IDs during your layout phase. Let me make that bigger. Can I make that bigger? There we go. Then you use the IDs. These are symbols, by the way. This is how you declare a symbol with a hash. Then you can use those during your layout phase to get a handle to the child, lay them out, position them, and get their sizes and do whatever you need to do your fancy positions and layouts as shown here, right? So you can do that with custom multi-child layout. This is a slightly nicer API, but yeah. There's slivers, there's all sorts of support, so worth looking at. Do you know what? Something else that someone I pointed this out the other day. I want to open this up. So we have layout builder. Right? This is something that we all know, and there's uses for it. Very few good uses, but there's good uses for it. There's also sliver layout.
You use it an awful lot. You must be running into the good use case a lot.
Yeah, sliver layout builder. There's one that most people don't know exists. So it does the same thing. It's a layout builder, but when you can use it during like a custom multi-child slivers or a custom scroll view and whenever you need slivers. What's really nice about this is the constraints that get passed to your layout builder are sliver constraints, which means you actually get a bunch of the things like the axis direction where you are in this cache, the cross-axis extend, growth direction. There's a bunch of parameters here, how much you've overlapped outside, that you can really do some fancy effects with without having to go down the route of doing custom slivers. So I'm just saying that now. There's possibilities of using this. I don't know what the performance aspect is of that. It's probably okay, actually, thinking about how this works. But yeah, so check it out if you want to have a play around. Sliver layout builder. Anyway, right, let's get back to our normal questions. Off topic. Right, let's see what we've got. You are muted, but I'm going to say, he says, why in many Flutter? Oh, no, gone.
Yeah. Okay. Why do you need to repeat it? Actually, you're not repeating it. What's going on here, and it's easiest to see with something like, have fun, hon. Lots happening here. If you take a look at this is a mono repo. Okay, so there are 3 different modules in it, and these are 3 different packages. So if this one is using something from this one, then what you do is you import the package custom gauges, but that doesn't tell you which file the classes and things you want are in. you have to tell it what file to go to. So this would be custom package, custom gauges, custom-gauges.dart. So that's why you've got it twice. And a lot of the time, these files are named the same thing as the package.
The only reason that's been done is by convention, right? Yeah. Like you can name them whatever you want. But the problem is no one knows what the other A begins. So it's really hard to find them. So by default, most people name their entry point to their library being the same one as their library. But it's quite common for some libraries to have like their full package and then a minified like version of just like the lightweight version. So you could have package name / lightweight.dart and maybe only include like the normal things that people use and not all the entire depth of the library or something like that. There's a bunch of reasons why you might want to have different top level entry points, but those normally do exports. So that's where they kind of import something from their source directory and export it out.
Gotcha. All righty. I have a constant model with default parameters, but I would like to create an empty constant model. So, okay, you want an empty constructor.
No, you don't want a factory one. Go on.
I just got stomped on. Oh, I'm roadkill. No, go right ahead.
You want to create an empty const model by using const factory empty model, but it asks me to replace factory with static instead.
That's because you don't want to use a factory.
So what you're doing here is you're not making one constant instance called empty. What you've made is a function that always returns a new instance that's empty. So if you try to compare two empty instances, unless your comparator or unless you've got an equals override, you're not going to be identical matching those. So you're going to have a failure. You're going to have a very bad day. So the most simple case for identical matches are the quickest, right? They have the same hash code, they're exactly the same instance. So what you normally want to do for the highest performance, and it is a little bit eking performance out, but when you do this a lot, which equals and checking these things normally happens quite a few times, it adds up. So what you want is a static const empty equals model parentheses. And what you're doing is you're making a static variable in your class called empty, which is one instance at compile time that you've made for your model. And whenever you use that empty instance, it's going to be identically matched, right? They're exactly the same instance. They're identical, which saves you having to write equals and hash code. And none of those checks have to take place because they're identical.
And a beginner-friendly pointer, we run into this a lot with people who are new coming into Dart. Dart does identity equality, not deep equality. Basically, when most people think of equals, is my test var1 equal to test var2? First question, are they the same type? Are they an integer? Okay. Second thing, are they the same value? So integer, yes. 5, yes. Dart doesn't care about that. Dart cares about, are these the exact same thing? Meaning there's one place in memory that a variable is stored at. And unless those two items are pointing to the same spot in memory, it's going to come back and say no.
So if you want to fix that problem, there's a deep collection equality and there's another list equality one, but I think it's a function. I can't remember where it is. Like list equals.
And I think fast immutable collections also solves this, I believe.
List equality. There you go. Yeah. So there's list equals as a foundation and function in foundation, which does this, and there's list equality and deep collection equality. And you can create one. So this is just you can compare two lists are equal, which is really how map equals as well. By the looks of it, right?
Yeah.
But you can gradually create a deep collection equality instance and then just reuse it. And then this has some other benefits. But there's also is this the actual external collection library? Is this the Dart collection one? I forget. But there's more stuff around in the main Dart collection collection package. Yeah.
I was going to say, you mentioned fast immutable collections, and yeah, that does actually solve that because it effectively creates the exact same immutable object given the same inputs. So converting a list to an I list automatically makes them identity equivalent if they're the same deep collection.
This is one of the
By
reasons.
default,
Yes. By
fast
default.
immutable collections does deep equality. It double checks the contents.
So
Right. Doesn't make them the same object, but it makes them equal.
Yeah, one of the nice things about having immutable objects is that you can generate the hash code up front when you create the object, like a list. The hash code for that entire list can be generated for its contents because it can't be modified. And then when it comes to actually then doing a comparison, you're just saying, are these two lists having the same hash code? Yes, they do. So they are well. Normally, if they have the same hash code, you then do a further check to see if they're deep equals. But whatever. Anyway.
And that's a great thing because that way you don't have to go looping through both lists comparing the contents. You just look at the hash code.
Here's the thing: even if you had two lists and you compare the contents of those, what deep is doing a deep nested thing. So then it goes into each one of those, and then essentially you're comparing all of the lists maybe of the children and all the maps of those children and so on and so on and so on, which is a really slow process, and that's why we don't do that by default. But if they're immutable and they can't be changed, well, then you know up front, if they have the same hash value, then they are probably the same. You
hash
do get
on
hash
creation,
collision,
and that's it.
You do get hash collisions, but I can't remember because we're not using 32-bit, it's 64-bit. I think it's like very rare that you're ever going to see a
it's really rare, and there are functions for handling it. If you get a hash collision, then there's a list of the items that came up with the same hash.
Yeah.
All right. How to handle an app crash?
Crush.
Way too vague.
It's crush. We crushed the app.
Crashalytics.
Okay.
That's you gave a really short question. We'll give a really short answer. Crashalytics.
Or Sentry. There's other things, right? The point here is if your app crashes, you need to report the crash so you can figure it out and fix it. That's what Crashalytics will do. That's what Sentry will do. You could always just like send it off to an API whenever a crash happens, and then you can figure out what went wrong for whatever the use case is. But yeah.
Okay, so do we have separate dispose methods for widget, element, and render? You only have to write the code for the widget tree. You can be lazy.
What's this? What's the
Do
question?
you need to write init, state, and dispose? Are there separate ones for widget, element, and render tree?
Not how I read it. I really like your analogy for related to init, state, and dispose. It would be great to hear if you have more analogies for widget tree, element tree, and render tree. Like
more analogies, or
yes, that's why I figured. That's why I read that as.
Okay, go ahead. You go ahead and run to the next one. I'm going to go get the 3-layer cake article, which I think
really good. Yeah, let's see what
I think Norbert stole from a while ago. But
how to run the ONNX model on Flutter? Never done it. No idea. But, with all of these models, right, at the end of the day is just implement it. I don't know, like how to run it is just make the model in Dart, use the model, implement it with the UI as best you see fit. Sorry, I feel like I'm not trying to shortchange you. Just that's how I would do it. I couldn't tell you any specific package to go to. Don't know of any. Come on, Randall, you're a Riverpod expert. What's this one? With Riverpod, I see dispose. I have to read it off. With Riverpod, I see dispose of notifier provider and refresh of widget ref. How can I use it properly? For example, changing route or switching tab menu. Could you show an example of these functions?
I don't grok this question. There's not enough information there for me to provide any specific or concrete answers. The way, if you have your route depending on a Riverpod provider, you just need a way to use a notifier underneath that to change the underlying value. It's really no different from any other global state. Whether it's a tab or a route or whatever, it's that's just global state, and you change that global state the same way you always change global state or update or watch global state with Riverpod. It's all the same technology. So I don't understand the specifics of this question. why those are specifically being called out.
Dispose of a notified provider. So he's saying that his provider is getting disposed of and the widget reference is getting refreshed. It sounds to me like maybe when he's navigating, he's like freeing up his providers. Like his providers are below the material app and not above the material app or something like that.
Or he might have it in with an auto dispose and it's no longer being watched because he's going to a second page.
Or or another. I was just going to say maybe his provider scope, right, is not defined or is not above his navigator. Checkmate your
provider scope should be right below main as far as I'm concerned. It just sits there because it needs to be there for every single widget below it. So I do that pretty consistently. It's basically main calls provider scope with run app. That's it, and then everything else below that.
I'm not. I feel like if you had a really large app, there'd be reason to have multiple provider scopes, maybe of the same things. But for most times, maybe it's force of habit, right? So from the provider, when you use provider, you could only ever have one type. I don't know what that sound is. There's a background sound coming from something.
Yeah, that's me again. Probably my noise of my laptop. Oh wait, that's.
Oh, it is. Yeah. There is a sound from you. Right, it was fine.
Anyway, running water in the kitchen.
Oh, okay. What was I saying? Yeah, but do you remember like provider? Because you can only have one set of types for entirety of provider, you ended up using custom types for a lot of things, and you would structure your app in such a way that wasn't a problem. And I think you just lived with it, right? So I think maybe with provider scope, you can get away with maybe scoping your types to a smaller portion of your UI or the way it works. And maybe that solves that problem.
Provider had like essentially used type as one of the keys into figuring out what provider you were talking to. Riverpod doesn't suffer from that. Riverpod, it's always the fact that you're being handed a variable value that is your
right,
provider.
right, because it's the global instance, right?
So it's done with variable scope.
But you can use your you can override them in your provider scope, right? You can do
you can create a provider scope that only covers a portion of the widget tree. Most people don't do that. Most people instead are encouraged, and in fact, I think Remy even encouraged this in the Riverpod Discord the other day. He encourages instead the use of families. So in other words, you would key your distinct providers by a family input parameter rather than by where it's sitting in the tree. And I understand that. It makes sense. But you can nested provider scopes are supported. But again, Remy sort of suggests maybe what you really want is a family.
All right. Oh, it's Simon.
Back up.
What?
I told you I was going to get this while you were talking.
Which question was this for? I've lost the question.
This was for, do we have an analogy for widgets, elements, and render layers?
This one.
So, yep, there we go. So this is an article by Norbert Kozer. He wrote this during beta in June of 2018.
Principles still apply, though.
Yep, absolutely. And this is how Flutter is working under the hood with all of these layers. So it goes over widgets, goes over renderings, goes over a lot of things in a very short period here.
I seem to remember there were some YouTube videos that came out from the Flutter team themselves around the very concept of the trees. There was one. Yeah.
And while you're looking that up real quick, Norbert also wrote Detective. It's a very, very handy Flutter debugging tool. So you can call just about any function from anywhere. You can make change and you can inject changes into the state on the fly.
Look,
all kinds of stuff.
Norbert did the same. So Norbert did this as a talk for Flutter Europe, which is now in the live chat. So there's one for you can pick up. I forgot about that one.
Detective is also going in a live chat.
Here we go. This is what you're looking for. How Flutter renders widgets. This is the YouTube video. It's in the chat for those that want to grab it. Well worth watching. There's also the Mahogany Staircase, which was the very original talk. It's
wow. That was during alpha, right?
It's really old,
In
but
fact,
it's still
that
working.
was at DartConf, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of the very early ones. Creative creator, or maybe not. I don't know if anyone knows that guy, but he's also done a definitive guide. And then I also noticed they recently did a rendering object decoding Flutter. I remember that one as well. That's a very short one. So the last video I've just posted would get you understanding what about render objects if you want to go down that path and understand them a bit more. And there's plenty of resources around them online. Right.
I do want to touch on one that they missed the cue, but it's a point. Why doesn't Google make Dart the default language for Android? Long story short, do you have any idea how much code would have to be rewritten?
And there's
It's
Fuchsia, so you got it with Fuchsia. You got it with Fuchsia, so
I kind of like the idea. I tell you what, I do kind of like the idea of. I wonder what would happen if you had Dart, a backend for Dart that would output Dalvik bytecode, and then a bunch of Dart definitions with external for all of the Android libraries. Because in theory, with that, you could then,
yeah, but what would the performance be going through the Dalvik VM?
It would be the same as any Android compiled Android app. I mean, like much to okay, more or less. But the thing is, but why is the question I'd say to Young? Why would you want to make it the default Android app when you can just still do what we have right now, where you're running Dart machine code, which is higher performing than the Dalvik code to a degree.
And you get the app on iOS.
Yeah. I mean,
and Windows.
Like, it's not Dart and Flutter are not trying to be operating systems, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Android's an operating system. And like also, I have said, people used to say that Flutter sucks because it can't access the camera. Flutter's a UI toolkit. It's not supposed to be able to access the hardware. I could say Android sucks because it doesn't fold my laundry. Yeah. Okay, it's not designed to do that.
It's also like that's why we have plugins, right, to give it extra functionality. I will also mention that the question revolves around the fact that there's a history behind Android working off of the JVM, the Java Virtual Machine, and that whole stack, and it's a different way of approaching software development than what Dart does. So it's not a one-to-one relationship. All right, shall I move on to the next question? Let's see. So I want to get this one from Simon. From how would you approach a lazy custom scroll view? A lazy custom scroll view. Are there any packages? It's interesting. So the thing is, I think you need to to extend that question, Simon, with what you mean by lazy. Because there's things that most lazy scrolling is more about, like, as I scroll down, I want to load more content. And if that's what you're talking about, then that's just like any list view is just in a sliver list instead. Like, it doesn't make any difference. What you can do is very similar to that sliver layout builder, or you can make a custom sliver. You can get the cache, what's called the cache extent, and then that'll tell you if you're reaching inside if your widget's been shown as part of the cache area, that's the area off the bottom of the screen, ready to come on screen. Then you can make a request and load the data back in, and then update the widgets that are in the sliver, the children, right, for the sliver's children for the custom scroll view. Basically, the point here is that your UI is reflecting of the state, and what you want to do is update that state as they scroll. So detect when they scroll, update the state. You can use a scroll controller. You can use a widget on the screen. There's a bunch of ways of doing that. I don't know if there's. I can't think of any specific packages because I just do it myself. So it's not overly complicated.
And just to a point that Randall made, and I want to be careful. Keep your eyes open for news on Fuchsia. That's all I will really say. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of effort into it.
Moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
Let's see what else we got here.
Okay.
So
did we actually? I was busy researching something. Did we take care of Simon? Yes, we did.
Yes. What have we got?
Thank you for the great effort. You're welcome.
I'm asking about if I want to receive messages or listening for changes in API acting like a foreground service and show notifications for change. Sorry, we lost context. Is this related to a previous question?
Yeah, and it's
Take a stab at it. I think what they're talking about is we were talking about earlier how you can watch Firestore for changes as deltas, but you can't do that with just arbitrary APIs unless they provide a delta mechanism, a change mechanism. You pretty much have to go back to polling. There's really nothing around that.
So I'm asking about if I want to receive messages or listening for changes in API acting like a foreground service. You can do that. I mean, or start a foreground service, have your code connect to an API, listen to a WebSocket, and then when you get a notification, show a notification to the user using local notifications.
So the fact that the notification comes in at all, that basically is your change.
If you want to listen to anything for over a long period of time, like less than once every 15 minutes, that if you want to have either exactly live data coming down to your mobile device, we're talking about mobile here, obviously. It's different for desktop environments, right, where power is not the same as mobile, and neither is battery and cell. But if you're talking about on a mobile thing, what you do is any repeat connection that you're trying to make will not get scheduled more than once every 15 minutes by the operating system to save the person's battery, right? Like it's really expensive to maintain a live connection. Most people pick up their phone and use it for very short periods of time, and then once they stop using their phone and they turn off the screen, after a little timeout, it will just power down the cell into its low power state. It will conserve battery power, it will power off the CPU into its low power state. Like literally, your device pretty much goes to sleep when you're not using it, so that the battery lasts, right? Otherwise, it would like the original phones, it would last like a few hours, and then good luck with that, right? So anyway, so the point is, if you want to constantly watch something from a server side, then you're going to need a foreground service or a way of putting something in front of the user to make sure that they're aware that they're still connected and aware of canceling that connection and being a good developer.
All right.
Hey, we're 45 minutes from the end of the broadcast. We've got 4 questions in the queue, maybe 3. Good time to get your questions in now, because at some point, maybe 15 to 20 minutes from now, we're going to have to cut people off. So get your questions in now.
And that's actually, I'm going to have to get going here shortly. What's the API to get app bar size? Now, I'm assuming what you really mean is how do you get an app bar size? Because there's no API for it that I know of. There's that. There is that. I was also thinking that since the app bar takes a widget for the title,
it's forced height.
You could make the title a layout builder and get the max constraints.
You can't. The problem is it's actually undefined. So I had a bit of there's actually an open issue ticket where I complained about this. They changed it so that the height of the app bar is undefined, so you can't like do a center properly. It won't go there right now. However, it resolves itself. But the point here is this is this K toolbar height constant. If you want to get the height of any app bar, it's always 56.
Now, do you have to do that within the media query?
No. It's a constant. Wherever you are, you can just go K toolbar height and you'll get the height of a toolbar because it's fixed. That's one of the reasons why I do not like this mechanism. Personally speaking, I would probably have a custom custom toolbar. So do you just have a column with your widget? Hang on, a column. People don't realize that scaffold does give you something, but instead of having an app bar and a scaffold, make yourself in the body, put a column, put your whatever widget you want as your app bar at the top, and then do an expanded with the rest. You've done exactly what the app bar does, but now you get to control everything to do with the app bar, how it looks, how it changes its height, how it interacts in some fashion. It's the reason why you can do a custom scroll view and have like a sliver persistent header or some other fancy like collapsing header. So you're not limited at all. But yeah, no, that's it. The constant is what I'd suggest.
For a minute there, I was thinking of the status bar, but no, okay.
That answers your direct question.
Nothing about plotting.
There's loads.
Flutter's a UI toolkit. It
There
makes UIs. It's not like
is a plot.
statistics.
No, but there is a plot package. Is there
No,
a
I'm saying
package?
there's a plot package, yes, but it's
No,
what do you got?
What's the one called? You got the stats package for getting for higher statistics, and then there's come on, Flutter chart FL charts. Is it FL charts? FL chart. That's the one. FL chart. Hang on, let me bring that up. Yeah, this one. FL chart. This has been around ages and ages and ages. This is the kind of thing you want to do. All these lovely charts. They're interactive and all the rest of it. Then yeah, you can do all this. FL charts. There you go. You got it all. I'll put it in the chat. I don't know, like, yeah, you said aesthetically. These are all very aesthetically pleasing to me. I don't know about you, but they all look cool. And very configurable. So that's what I'd say you go for.
This is an interesting. Okay.
Which one?
I'm just looking at something real quick.
I'll just pick up the next one for now. Does anyone know if it's possible to run custom tasks every 6 hours on iOS, regardless of whether the app is closed? I'm pretty sure you can do that, though. Background fetch can't. You can schedule. I seem to remember you can set up timers. You couldn't in the original iOS, but they added it in like iOS 2 or 3 or something, didn't they?
Wouldn't those all be tied to the execution of the program, though? And if the app or if the OS kills the program, it can't do any of the background things?
No, it launches the app. It's launched with options.
Oh, okay. So kind of catching it up with parity with Android, because Android has cron equivalent, I think.
Yeah, here you go. But it's called. There's a package actually. Let me open this up. Here you go. Background fetch 110 is the actual term. Is called background fetch on iOS. And it provides a scheduled task method for scheduling arbitrary one-shots for periodic tasks. There's no way to increase this rate. Fetch occurs. There's plugins rate most frequent possible. Never receive faster than 50 minutes, as I said earlier. The operator will automatically throttle the rate at which they occur. Will only fire once the device is plugged into power and is designed for low priority tasks to run frequently. Yeah, when your app is terminated, your app no longer fires events. There's no such thing as stop on terminate false for iOS. I think the difference here is this is about. I wonder if this is closed by the user or forcefully terminated, being the difference here. The user does not. If the user does not open your iOS for long periods of time, the iOS will stop firing the events. There you go.
Alrighty. Got a quick follow-up here.
Go on.
Okay. Yes, it is toolbar height, and I realize that might not make any sense.
No. He's saying, does it stand for K Korea?
No, I think because the name's Korean. His name is Korean. I think he's asking for clarification on toolbar height. So, with that in mind, let's see. The app bar itself, most of the time, all we use is the toolbar. This is the toolbar. But the app bar is capable of doing more, such as you can see right here with the toolbar and a tab bar inside of the app bar. So the toolbar is the top portion of it. It's the part where you get things like your leading and a number of other things right there. Like right here, there's a menu icon in the leading. Then you put in a text bar. You've got various actions on the right. And so that's the toolbar is part of the app bar.
I think what people are missing here. So I'll bring this up actually. So first of all, the K, by the way, is a call over from the iOS stuff that happened inside Flutter. So there's lots of constants that start with K. There's like K minimum dimension, K min velocity, K this, K that. Right?
Yes, it's Hungarian notation. Deal with it.
Hungarian K is short for constant, like K is short for chroma. So there's there's like kind of this Hungarian notation that kind of stuck around, but it's also kind of a nice shortcut to always finding a constant that's in the framework. You just type K and up they come in your IDE. So they kind of stuck around for that reason. But the what you're talking about toolbar height, I will mention here that app bar has something very special. App bar is one of very few widgets. Why does it not? Oh no, it does. There you go. App bar extends or implements an interface, which I'm going to show you here. The implements preferred size widget. Preferred size widget has one getter, its preferred size, and this is how you get its height constraint. So if you add like Scott was showing, if you add a tab bar to a app bar, you can call its preferred size getter on the widget, and that will give you the toolbar height and the tab bar height together. That's what that's there for. It's literally how the scaffold knows how big it is and where to position it. It uses this preferred size getter. And there's actually a preferred size. This is kind of unfortunately named preferred size widget because there's nothing to do with the widget. It's just this interface with this getter. That's all it is. There's actually a preferred size widget called preferred size. Sorry for the naming, as I said. And this allows you to in place of an app bar, put whatever widget you want. So you can just wrap any widget with this, and it provides the value for the getter. So
now, that's an interesting one, because one of the things I used to use to get around the fact that you couldn't put a gradient in the app bar before was that the title can be a widget. So I basically just put in a sized box expand and then put a gradient in that sized box, and all of a sudden I had a background now for
a nice
gradient in my app bar.
A nice way of dealing with that, an alternative way, is to say scaffold, the app bar parameter is a preferred size widget. Inside that preferred size widget is a box decoration, and inside that box decoration is an app bar. So what you've done
is probably a more elegant way to do it.
Now wrap your app bar with a box decoration, and that can do whatever it wants, and a drop shadow, I don't know, do whatever, and then it sits inside the scaffold perfectly fine.
So when people say that you can't do snazzy, cool-looking things with an app bar, we find ways to cheat.
It has been
we
designed.
Like cheating. So this is an interesting one. Has anybody tried to add a new type of platform renderer? Would it be fun to create an implementation, use Flutter to render things in a terminal or on an LED panel or any other type of display? Electronic ink.
Quick. Okay.
Quick, hide the electronic ink. Simon will jump on this and talk about it for 3 days.
So I did a talk about this, and you'll find here is share my screen again. There you go. So I'll put the chat link in the chat, and in this repo you will find a way of driving e-ink displays with Flutter. So there you go. I did this for Flutter Global Summit, and here's a code for a clock that runs, and the slides are here, and so on, and you can go check it out. But yeah, this is the code that does exactly what was the question? It was like, can I drive an external display? Yes, you can.
Driving other stuff. Yep. Yeah, people do interesting things with Flutter on Raspberry Pi. Really, it's just Linux. So, alrighty. Simon said something vague. Never happens.
So sorry, I may have skipped that. So everything in Flutter is a symbol, right? So a method name is a symbol. Any variable name is called a symbol. It's how a compiler works. It works with symbols. These are just strings of text. Well, when you want to do something like, and there's also called a no such method, right? On every object, it has what's called a no such method handler. And this is so that if the method doesn't exist in an object, it will call this function. And here it gives you invocation. Invocation is the parameters and how this request was made to the framework, right? So, sorry, so here you can see if it was called by a getter, and if you notice, symbol. Where did this thing come from? So this is how this when you get one of these invocations, this is how you know what the type names were for the parameters, what the member name was for the method that you called, things like that. And a symbol is just this. It's a what's the best way of putting this? Yeah, it's just the class that represents a naming code. So yeah, you put your name in, you get a symbol out. You can be used for like mirrors and opaque invocations and functions apply and various other things. But if you want to construct a symbol in code at compile time, you put the hash symbol before a string, and you can put that wherever you want. So let me basically just let me. Can I do this? Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, stop. Yeah. Will this work? Will it blend? There we go. Let's see. There we go. I have a little editor here. Hopefully, is everyone seeing that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you can say like const blah equals hash whatever you want. And what you've done here is the hash before this makes this the symbol. It is essentially the same as doing const blah equals symbol whatever you want. Yeah, but so it's exactly the same as this, except for this. I think the symbol constructor is constant. I don't think it is. I can't remember.
A symbol's always automatically constant because it is unique. You can say pound whatever you want somewhere else in your code, and they would be identical.
Yeah.
So it's always a constant anyway.
You dropped the wrong one, Simon.
No, I clicked.
Nope.
I clicked on.
Just me.
Just you. Yeah. So this is a way of like making a unique identifier in code, right? So it's globally unique throughout your entire application. FYI. Anyway, right, there you go. If you want to know. You used to be able to put a hash symbol before a constructor to do a constructor tear off. Did you know that? In Dart 1.
Ooh.
Yeah. And
interesting point real quick. The Flutter style guide recommends Hungarian notation only in certain cases, but the effective Dart style says don't use them since Dart is statically typed. Also, it could be worse. I mean, let's take a look at the framework for a moment. We've got the flex class, which takes a flexible. The flex class, the flex is flexible. It takes a flexible. The strength of the flexible is determined by the flex, other flex. There's two different flexes working here. Okay. Then there are lots of other things, such as what Simon was just saying. Okay. Preferred size is a widget, but the preferred size widget, really, all you need there is the method. So preferred size widget is not, preferred size is. It could be a lot worse. Okay. This could be like English, where we drive on the parkway and park in the driveway. So just when you think the framework is getting a little confusing, think about English. It's not a problem.
All words that sound the same that mean totally different things. Can you bring that back up for a second? Sorry. That was the other side of this is so C and C++ can be strongly statically typed, but you still use the notations. The thing is, it was a lot of the reason why Hungarian notation was made popular in programming, from my understanding of this, is that it was before IntelliSense, before IDEs became intelligent enough to suggest things to you, right? So you knew ahead of time that, oh, this starts with SZ, so this is a string that's zero terminated. Or this thing starts with I, so it's an integer. So you had some recollection as to what types variables were. They are strongly typed still. They're statically typed. However, you didn't have the pop-up that tells you what type of a symbol is, because that wasn't a thing back then. The IDEs weren't intelligent enough to do that. We didn't have the power we have of computers now to do those things, right? So a lot of the time, Hungarian notation made sense when you're programming in that sphere of things, right? I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, Randall. Would you agree with that? We get a thumbs up from Randall. Okay.
We're getting a thumbs up. Also, you got to remember that Simon's so good at debugging because he originally learned to debug on punch cards. You know, where there were no tooltips. You had to sit there, you know, with a pen and paper. Hey, when I was in the military, we literally did have to learn assembly and working it out with a pen and paper. They made us do that.
I remember.
That's a story for another day.
I remember writing assembly out on paper. I also remember designing sprites with graph paper. So you do your like grid, your little matrix grid, fill out the boxes and work out what the binary was for each like cell, write it out the hex codes, and then import that in your basic.
Yep. And for
when
those
I
who
started
don't know,
computing, we didn't have ones and zeros. We only had zeros. It was a lot harder.
But for those who don't know, assembler, well, the way we learned it, we called it macro emulation. Things like opcodes and IO instructions. So like 073 was an input-output function. Then you would have the code for what it's actually doing. Then it would show you 2 register addresses, and that's where you're taking the data from and moving it to. Then it got weirder because we had to work out on paper the micro emulation, which was the actual nuts and bolts of, on one clock tick, access the first bit of this register
all right,
on the
Mr.
next clock
Mr.
tick.
History.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be honest, I do want to say
JK
that
flip-flops. Learn JK flip-flops.
I want to mention that I kind of feel like I always say this, but I do want to mention that this is exactly how computers, the one in front of you right now that you're watching YouTube on, work. They still work exactly this way. They still use assembly. They still use instructions. They still use microcode. This is still exactly the way computers work. Nothing has changed. They just got faster and bigger, right? So if you want to go learn this stuff, it is really helpful to understand the layers of the architecture of your computer by just knowing the layers of software. Really,
there was a time when people couldn't believe that a machine could do 1 million operations a second.
Yeah,
a megahertz. This was huge. All right.
And if you're mystified about how something like the C compiler can possibly work, you should read the Dragon book and all those subsequent books following into that area.
I've got a bunch of compiler books. Learning compilers or making your own interpreter is like a rite of passage for I think every programmer.
Yeah,
definitely. It's one of those things you should do.
And if you're going to play with that a little bit, use Petit Parser. It's an amazing package that lets you build essentially descriptions. Petit Parser. I don't know how to pronounce it, but basically lets you describe a grammar that can lexically analyze a string and then transform that into some set of data, and without doing a lot of extra coding. In fact, I'm now finding it easier to write Petit Parser expressions than to write regular expressions.
Oh, that. The wrong one.
Yeah, because regular expressions are to the next guy down it's just gibberish, right? So I'm trying to avoid gibberish, and it turns out a Petit Parser description of something is very English-like, very able to read. So check it out.
If you want to write your own interpreter or compiler or something like that, start here. Petit Parser. There you go. It's a good starting point for how you.
What's the second technology you would suggest for someone who started their development journey with Flutter? Probably, I don't know, writing a parser, and when you work it all out on your whiteboard, when you work it out on your whiteboard, be sure, to use Boolean algebra.
This was your start to bring. This was your
Here you go. Now this looks like a little dude on Star Trek, but actually this is it's an with a NOT gate inverting it on the top. And in all seriousness, what would we recommend for somebody who started with Flutter?
I always thought you were going to bring up the roadmap, your lovely roadmap that you normally bring up.
Well, that's okay, but I think they're talking about a different technology, not how to learn Flutter.
What is the next thing you should learn after you've learned Flutter? Like to kind of experience more.
Well, I guess the roadmap does
React Native, just so you can experience the pain along with everybody else.
Just experience the pain like the rest of us.
Share your
smack
pain.
Him. Just smack him. All right, where do we put it?
I mean, to be honest, like I don't think Flutter, like learning any other language is a good start. Just try all the languages and see how you do things. And the best thing you can do is pick up a task that you want to do and say, I'm going to do this in PHP or in, I don't know, Golang, and start trying that out, learning it, and you start seeing the similarities between the multiple languages, how they work, and you become what's the word for those people that can polyglot, a programming polyglot.
Oh man,
right? I mean, it is like I could go pick up another language and the wealth of knowledge that I kind of built over my career, I can kind of take that to the new language and understanding happens, if that kind of makes sense, rather than sort of a brick wall. You start relating topics together from somewhere else and you start piecing it together.
Like I stopped listing languages on my resume when I got to 50 of them. It's important to spread horizontally.
Well, and in all seriousness, though, I mean, to narrow down to one, don't just try any old one. What I would do if you want to go from Flutter and learn something else that you'll be able to pick up without a lot of frustration, honestly, and it could be a lot of fun, I would go over to Unity and do a little game work because they use C#. And C# really is like sitting next to Flutter close enough that it's touching shoulders. I mean, C# to me is like writing Flutter with public and private. And
C# is a good option.
The capitals, that's right. You capitalize differently. Other than that,
to be honest though, like you could pick any .NET based language and they're very modern, right? Golang is another modern one. Kotlin, another modern language. Swift,
Golang would always be good. The Golang would be useful at work.
But to be honest,
for a lot of people.
I still think people like all these languages are built using C and C++ and C++ produce assembler, right? Like the point here is that the more widely you spread your net, the more you're going to learn, right? So just pick the next thing and say, I'm going to do that.
Now, if you want to learn more in Flutter,
use this.
You could go for design principles, which design patterns actually. Things like observer, the command pattern, builder state, composite. The big ones that we use in Flutter, most of them, Flutter's based on composite. Of course, there's state. We've got builders all over the place. Observer is a lot of your state management. And then, of course, dependency injection. So Flutter's built with a lot of patterns. Design principles, networking, persistence, databases, architecture patterns. And again, the link to this is up on the banner right now. So continuous integration, analytics, store. Where's testing? Where's testing? Aha.
EVGV for testing.
Yep. Test-driven development and business-driven development. So, I mean, this is a great roadmap if you want to go deeper after learning Flutter. But if you want to go with more breadth, then yeah, we're looking at other languages and things. And I really think Unity would be the least painful way to go.
Definitely. I have something to just talk about other languages. This is something that I don't know if any of you have seen. Quine Relay, an Uberos and Ouroboros program with 100 plus programming languages. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. So here you go. Let me see if I can get this. Can you see those languages on that?
I can see that. I don't see Dart.
Hang on. Let me see if I can. Why is it?
They're alphabetized.
Oh, no. I see what it is. Hang on.
And a Quine, just to describe, although I bet Simon was about to do this, is a program that when run prints its own source code.
Yeah.
In clever ways.
What this one is doing. See if I can get it for everyone. There we go. That's about as big as we're going to see it on the screen. Yeah. So if you can see here, it basically means that the JavaScript, let's say we're going to go top right here. The Java one outputs JavaScript. The JavaScript one outputs JQ. The JQ outputs JSFuck. That outputs Kotlin. That outputs, and it goes round in a big circle of 128 different languages. So this is how it is super awesome. Check out the source code. Really great.
It's terrifying. So really, in order to do this in Dart, you would need to learn Daphne and DC in order to wedge Dart in between.
It's not actually on this list. If it's not, someone should add Dart to it. Oh yeah, no, it's not on there.
No.
There's a job for us. So anyway, yeah. So Quine Relay, I've put the link in the chat. This is awesome. So yeah, you need the problem is you need all the interpreters and compilers to run it. But you can do it, and there you go. There's run each program. There you go. One outputs the other, one outputs the other, one outputs the other. Where you go. And then this one outputs the beginning, and you can go right again. Anyway, so there you go. So lots and lots of fun for all the family. There you go.
Okay, one more before I need to run. What would I use if I wanted to create a box for every user that logs in and show the boxes for each user, I believe, on every user's screen? So you can see each other.
So go look at the Boring Show episode that I just recorded because it tells you how to do that. There you go. So that's literally it. It literally goes through that. I'm
looking it up right now. Do you just keep talking?
All right. So the yes. So a box, as in like a part of the UI, is just obviously a representation of state, and then you want to just share that state with everyone. So essentially, you want a list. Yeah, this is the one. Yeah, full stack Dart. Yeah, that's the one. So there's 2 more episodes to come after this. This is just the first of 3, and at the end of it, you'll have at the end of all 3 episodes, you'll have your answer and more. So just stick with the first basic one. But in this example here, we use WebSockets to communicate with Dart on the server side to share state between multiple clients, which is exactly what you're asking for.
There you go.
There's complexity we add scaling, and that all goes, and then the following videos that follow up talk about that a bit more. There you go.
All right. And image compression.
This one. Yeah. So when you load an image, you compress it. So inside the Android SDK, if you have a image from the .ui library, it actually has a 2 byte data, and you can give it the format. And then if you use the pub.dev, if you've got like an image, you can load it with the image package, and the image package has a like to and from PNG, PDF, and all this jazz. And that actually, not that one. That actually has I think it's like a global encode function, if I remember rightly. Well, there's the PNG encoder. Filter level, JPEG will probably have like how you want to. Oh, there you go. JPEG encoder, quality level. There's actually like a global encode file or something like that, if I remember rightly. But there's some top level static functions somewhere. Yeah, here they are. CPO noise, grayscale. I seem to remember they are encode PNG. Yeah, so you can just give it an image and you give it a level, and then it will just encode the image. And there's a encode GIF, encode bitmap, JPEG, whatever. So those all work. It's pure Dart implementation. The image one, this one will always be more efficient. So I just want to explain. This will always be more efficient. I seem to remember there's another function, isn't there? Hang on, go on. You've got another?
I got to share.
Go for it.
If you're feeling really lazy, just use a package.
I think
image compression package. So
yeah, well, the question is how these things achieved.
It just says how to compress images before uploading them.
But what I'm trying to get is, so some of these packages rely on the native OS to do it, right? So they'll call out to Android and ask Android to compress the image, which is great, but then that package may only work on Android, right? It also means that might have downsides in itself for other reasons.
This
right?
one happens to work on Android, iOS, Linux, Mac, web, and Windows.
Just
image
all
compression.
All I'm trying to say is check.
Right. Oh, yes. No, absolutely check.
There is, I seem to remember there is a way of taking an image and getting a PNG straight out of Flutter itself. Or maybe that's reading a pin. No, I'm pretty sure there's a way of getting a JPEG or PNG straight out of Flutter without any.
I'm going to have to take off. There's one other one here real quick. And, but yeah, I'll let you finish that up. But with this next one, they're talking about functions getting warmed up. I think what they're really referring to, might want to clarify, are you talking about warming up shaders from Metal?
Hang on.
So, but I'm going to have to get going. I will catch you all later.
Cool.
Sanjay, don't do that.
Thanks, Scott.
Don't.
We're not talking about state management. That's the only time I'm ever going to say it. That's it. It's done for the stream. Sorry. Go read our go watch our previous streams. There you go.
Yes.
Right.
We've done it many times. Yes.
We'll answer a few more questions.
Catch y'all later.
All right. See you.
Right, Scott.
I was reading let's get it up there now. What was this one? I was reading about static metaprogramming. What other features in Dart can make better languages like better, like make better language of Kotlin.
There's a subtext there that you're not gonna make Dart enthusiasts happy with that statement at all.
They're different languages. They have different aspects to them. Kotlin Swift doesn't have a lot of the things that Dart does. So let's play devil's advocate there. They are different. Like once we add static metaprogramming, Kotlin and Swift don't do that, right? So there's plenty of reasons. I'm not sure if I can think of one particular use case. The null safety stuff was the big one, and we've got that now. There's always improvements, though. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one specific use case. Oh, guarded if statements is a nice one of Swift I do like. So that being able to do like you've seen this, right, Randall, where you do like if let a equals whatever, then do this, and then if it's not null, it enters the if statement and the value is set, and you only use that variable in the if statement and stuff like that.
Language design is interesting and difficult and not meant for the faint-hearted, because the problem is if you throw everything in the kitchen sink as well into a language, it becomes difficult to learn and difficult to debug.
People did this.
So you have to think about what are the sort of minimum things I can add to the language that expand the greatest new set of problems. And it's not a trivial thing to understand that. You have to have a lot of experience working in a lot of crappy languages and some good languages to be able to do this. And I think the Dart team has done a wonderful job of balancing new feature requests with a development schedule and with not putting everything, including the kitchen sink, into Dart, because Dart doesn't feel like everything and the kitchen sink yet. And hopefully it will never will.
It will never do that. Hopefully, fingers crossed, right? So this is where you want to go. It's the Dart language repository where all of the accepted and specifications that are in place right now that they're trying to work on come in here. I can't remember where they are now. I'm just going to accepted. There you go. For different versions, like 2.14, triple shift operator was brought back in. Here's the feature specification for it. Here is the implementation plan on how they're going to implement it, what it's going to be affected, so on and so forth. All of this is open to you to come in and comment on. They have a bunch of issues and feature requests and pull requests talking about all the new features, right? And that's nice. Anyway, there's a bunch of new ideas and concepts as well. There's the project board, which is the language, he says. which is the language funnel here. And inside here, you'll find the new things that they're working on, like statometric program, which is what's mentioned by the questioner. Views on the object without a wrapper object. Sound declaration, site variants, patterns, and this is the one I really liked. Let me open that up for a second. So this, why are you opening a new tab? Why you do that? Bring that back in. Mr. Bob himself, Bob Nystrom. We're starting to investigate a couple of related language choices around tuples, pattern matching, and destructuring. These features touch on things like data classes, and these are some of the really interesting stuff that I kind of like the look of coming up. So there's some examples down here of what they're talking about. I think they've got different tickets for these things now. I don't know if it's all discussed in here. There's just so much to this. Like this, that height. I would say go through the. There's a lot of discussion on here. Go through the related tickets. So, for example, syntax for catching multiple exceptions on a single block. There's an example of case functions. This is one that I like the idea of. So this is where I do this quite often, actually, where I write a function that returns a value. So here's an example here of what they're saying that you might be able to do, where you can have cases in a function. Not necessarily this, but I like the idea of returning a value from a case.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what this is, but I like the idea of having not necessarily this format, but having a switch statement that returns a value. I think it's really powerful to be able to do that. But there's a bunch of advanced stuff. I won't browse into this too much. Here we go. So add some Swift examples of doing this kind of thing, right? Where you take like a tuple and then you can destructure a tuple back into some local variables. This is very common in a lot of languages, right? But this is very powerful. It means you stop having to access members to and so on and so forth. There's a powerful set of features that you could do around revolve around this. But the point of all these
one of the things you need to keep in mind is that it's one thing to just simply say, I want a feature in the language that allows me to do this specific piece of code. But in order for it to actually go in the language, it has to go into the language spec. And if you haven't seen the language spec yet, you should take a look at it when you have any kind of insomnia. You can start reading it. It will put you to sleep in 20 minutes. Because every little corner nuance has to be described about how this works. And if they can't do that easily, it's not likely to be a feature that goes in, because you have to be able to specify precisely what the compiler does. Yeah, it's crazy, crazy stuff. I learned some things actually going through that, but yeah.
Here you go. Here's the first version. Oh, only 249 pages.
Yes.
Here's the full language
April 9th, though, recent.
Here's the full language specification if you want to go read it, and all its features and everything. Yeah. That's why there's such a process involved, right?
Yeah.
So, I had to land on that, didn't
I? And if you read the deltas to that spec, that's also in GitHub. So if you read the deltas to it, it's fascinating about what they've added and how they've had to add things like, enums with payload and things like that. So it's amazing. It's a fun, like I said, it's a great read if you want to try to put yourself to sleep. But for people like me that are sort of polyglots and language enthusiasts, it's actually fascinating.
Okay, so what other questions do we have that come in? Let's have a quick go through the
warmed up thing. The answer, or they elaborate the warmed up thing.
Yeah. I saw a great question, like why functions need to get warmed up. Like in my head, it's just a machine, but why things work faster when it gets to. Okay, they do not need to get warmed up. Okay, so let me. This is you're talking about functions and code. The difference is type of compilation that takes place. So a lot of JavaScript itself is JIT interpreted. That's just in time. So literally what happens is when you call a method, it goes, have I compiled this yet? No, I'm going to compile it now, and then I'm going to call my compiled method. Or it interprets it on the fly, and then it compiles it. Next time it will run the compiled version. There's a couple of different approaches. But the point here is that's warm up, because next time you call the function, it's got pre-compiled, and it will use the compiled version of the function. So the what's called the hot code paths of the application are going to be compiled in machine code, and each time they get used, they normally get more optimized, right? This is just-in-time compilation. You can go read it up. It's called JIT. This is how the debug mode in Dart works. Dart in debug mode is JIT compiled. Exactly how JavaScript works. Not exactly, but the same principles, right? Now, on the flip side, when you compile your app for release, it compiles it once when you build your app, and that's it. At runtime, it's pre-compiled, it's running machine code. It doesn't compile anything, it doesn't need warming up. So the whole idea of warm up is something that only just-in-time compiled applications require, and Dart does not require this. It's just in the debug mode, and it's like that so we can do hot reload, hot restart.
A slight addition to that, it also is about which pages of the application are paged into memory a little bit, because if it's still loading it from VM or whatever, it might be a bit of a delay. So what you're doing is you're running all the things in your benchmark ahead of time to make sure those are all paged in and ready to run.
That's definitely going down there, but yeah, so that's what he's talking about.
Okay.
So let me just explicitly specify that. Let's say let's say you compiled your app, and your app is 10 megabytes in size, the compiled code. What happens when your operating system loads that? It maps in the 10 megabyte file of your executable into memory, but it doesn't actually load all of the areas. They're called pages. Your app, that 10 megabytes is broken up to normally 4 kilobyte chunks, right? Small chunks. And it's only when the processor tries to access an area of memory, they then gets loaded from the hard drive or from the disk, from the SSD, whatever, into RAM. And that's because you might not have enough RAM to put the entire 10 megabytes or whatever you're trying to load, let's say gigabyte of data, into memory. So the point here is, once it's been loaded once, it's in memory, and it's likely not to get paged out or put back to disk in the current running of your application. So that's the warm-up procedure. But to be honest, it's only benchmarks you're going to see any remote difference at that level. It's so quick. It's so quick. Unless you're reaching the memory churn limits of your machine, that is all your RAM is entirely full, you're not going to see any performance benefits from that. So don't even worry about that. That's minor. It's still a thing, and it's still a thing for benchmarking when you're doing a million iterations of something to see how fast it is. Those million, well, you're doing that whole thing a million times, that adds up, right? So yeah. Anyway, I'll shut up now. How's the 3D packages? It's going well.
You got 5 seconds to answer. Go.
All right. Yeah. Look. But no, the 3D package is going well. I just find the time to work on it. We'll see how it goes. But I'll be pushing updates on my Twitter. So I took the names off earlier. So there you go. Hang on. When can I get them back? Hang on. I need to press the right button, Simon. There you go. So you can follow us on Twitter at Randall Swartz and at Dev Angels London, and you'll get updates from me on there. What else we got quickly? It was from a talk about cloud, and there are functions, and
we answered that.
Oh, was this was this the hot reload thing? It was functions that didn't get instantly, so they had to keep functions warmed up. Again, that's about cloud. The instances weren't running, so they need to keep the instances running so that when the requests come in from the network, they're there to be worked on. So slightly different, but the same principles apply. They're in place to do it beforehand. That's cloud functions, and that's not the same as writing. Cloud functions is just a name given to writing stuff for the server. They're not functions in that sense. Pardon me. Anyway, but yeah, you can keep one instance. So if you go Cloud Run, look it up. You can keep one instance of your Cloud Run around, so that you're always operating immediately. So that keeps it ready. So I watched The Boring Show and got inspired to use Shelf. When's the next episode? When Google push out the next episode? I don't know. I don't know how. How often do they push them out? Go look at the YouTube feed and see when was the previous one to that. Maybe it's on a schedule.
That would be Google announcing a schedule. I don't think they do that.
No, what I mean is like on YouTube. If it's like every 2 weeks
YouTube.
that they upload a Boring Show episode, then it'd be 2 weeks from the last one.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yep.
Right. And
this should be quick.
What book series did Simon mention about how compilers work? Well, I've got several. Hang on, let me get one for you. The one I recommend.
And there's the Dragon book. Was the classic for that. Aho, somebody and somebody. 3 names. But if you Google Dragon book, I'm sure
that's a small selection of books about compilers.
Oh yeah.
If you want to know what I've read, let's go with the oldest. I think this is the oldest one. Recognize that small C compiler?
Small C compiler. SMAC. SMACC. Yes.
Yeah. So there you go. So that's been around a long time. When was that dated? I don't even know.
Oh man, that's got to be late 70s, early 80s.
This is a new model than that. Oh no,
Okay.
First published 1988. There you go.
See, not bad, right? Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
late
small
80s.
C, which is a nice one.
Yep.
This is one that you might not recognize. This is actually someone's it was actually a limited run. I don't think you'll get this. Build Your Own Compiler with C++ by Jim Holmes. This was actually a PhD thesis that was turned into a book. So that's pretty awesome. And then these are the 2 books, like Essence of Compilers by Robin Hunter. This is my go-to book. This is a really good book. Recommend that. The one that there's that one, and then finally here's the second edition of Writing Compilers and Interpreters by Ronald Mack. Applied approach to using C++. All these are using C++, but it doesn't matter that they're using C++. The principles and techniques, you can write these things in Dart. You know, still object-oriented patterns and so on and so forth. You know, it's not. I feel like I say that too easily, but you know, you read like some C++ code, and it's like, okay, that's a function, that's a type, right? That, you know, like you can understand the principles to apply. It's also that it's not the fact that you're using C++ that makes any difference. It's the techniques of writing a compiler, the patterns that you use, how you pass text into actual abstract syntax tree, various things like that. These are the things that make a compiler and how you do it. But you can make there's some really good simple online. I mean, these are books, right? These are ancient. There's so much stuff online. There's some really nice short online courses that people have done, that other programmers have written about how to make your own little interpreter. And they talk you through like a little tutorial series. There's tons of that stuff around. Highly recommend it. Maybe next week. Maybe that's what I should do. Just okay. And then obviously the Dragon book is in the Z library. The Dragon compilers by design, isn't it called the Dragon book?
I don't know. It's by Aho though, so I can Google for it.
I can't remember. Yeah, it's famous. Totally famous. Big Red Book, if I remember rightly. That's the Dragon book, right? That's what it's called, Dragon book. Yeah. So
Dragon book is compilers. Dragon book is compilers, principles, techniques, and tools by Aho and Sethi and Ullman.
Okay. There you go. I actually have a book. Here's I do bang on about this, but I do want to reference this book. If anyone wants to know more about this kind of level, if they're interested in it, I think every programmer should know this stuff. If I'm honest, that's my personal opinion of it, and that is this book is the one I'd recommend. The Essentials of Computer Organization Architecture by Linda Null and Julia Labor. This actually talks about building your own virtual machine in here, like your basic virtual machine. They called it Introduction to a Simple Computer, and they actually building the CPU registers, architecture, bus, blah blah blah, memory, all sorts of other fun things. I'd recommend. There's another book. But yeah, maybe okay. What's everyone think? Whoever's still around, should we write a compiler? Should I write a simple compiler interpreter for a very, very simple something next week?
You do it in one episode? I don't know.
I could do that in one episode. I was thinking of interpreting brainfuck. You know the language.
Oh
BF?
yeah, that's yeah, of course.
Yeah, that could be. That's a really simple one to do. It's like got like what 10 opcodes, and you can do some really cool stuff with those 10 opcodes.
I pasted the Amazon link to buy a copy of the modern version of the Dragon book, and it's $159. What the hell?
Dude, this book, when I first booked my first copy of this book, it was £85.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
But I'd say it's the best £85 I ever spent. I'll tell you that one. But I bought this. This is a second-hand copy for £1.99 on Amazon. So, I mean, what is it? Is it going to have a pencil drawing somewhere or a sticker on it? What, like, it's a book. Go get a second-hand
property of in the front of somebody else.
Actually, I think it's actually had a stick like that. I think it had a stick like that.
Of course.
But the point here is like, you know, go don't get yourself. I'm all for authors. I'm all for authors and like brand new and like, you know, buying at brand new prices and all the rest of it. They need to get their money's worth for what they've done, for the hard work they put in. But when it comes to like, you know, that Dragon book, that like how much? Really? I mean,
59. Yeah. Oh, it's 47 over here to rent. That's really silly.
See, the thing is, I get about these things, right? Is it feels very much like the Photoshop of the day, right? Where the big companies come along. We want £2,000 for this photo editing software.
Yeah.
Okay, you're aiming for professionals. Okay, maybe they'll cough up that money. But how many sales do you actually get when they realize now that they do a subscription model? Oh, they get a shit ton more money out of doing that, by my French, right? So it's like, and the people that want it for 1 month get it for 1 month, right? Or they get the use of the software. And I think you can't do that with books, but to be honest, like there's a point at which that is just too much for a book.
Yeah.
Way too much.
Well, and as an author, I know that by the time it dribbles down to me, it's not a lot of money. So you never write textbooks.
I mean,
you never write scientific books to get rich. You write scientific books to get credentials, and that's the only reason I was still writing a few books back in the day. Is
that always going for publishers though? Because publishers take a huge chunk of the change, don't they?
It's basically 4 pieces. So there's the retailer gets a quarter, the distributor gets a quarter, the publisher gets a quarter, but then that last quarter has 2 pieces to it. Part of it is printing costs, and the other part is authors. So the authors in general get about, depending on how to negotiate it, between 9 and 12%, and they share that.
I think that the other side of this is if you can get out of like do self-publishing, then you're going to have a better chunk of the change.
But then you absorb all the costs of marketing it for yourself, which if you have a name and a reputation and a great website, that's probably okay. But most of what you're paying for that first 2 tiers are, in fact, 50% of the cost is, in fact, getting your book marketed and into people's hands and into conferences and things like that.
You talk about like O'Reilly, like O'Reilly or A-Press and things like that have a huge name in the technology industry. And like you become an author for an O'Reilly book, it's sold, right? Like you don't have to publish that. O'Reilly are it's going to go off the shelves with O'Reilly, right? So I
ship it to them and we do a couple of review copies and that's it. And then it's all handled on its own. I haven't had to manually order Learning Pearl copies for years. It's all just automatic. It just happens.
I always wonder like how the royalties for a long period of time work. Like
they go down.
No, I know that. But what I'm trying to get is like
I'm still making probably depending on the quarter, but I'm still making around $400 a quarter from Learning Pearl.
That's not bad.
So
nothing to snipe at.
It's decades old now.
I know that's what I'm trying to say. It's nothing to really like complain about. It's something.
No, It's $400 I wouldn't have otherwise. So, and that's actually, and I'm even like I only get a third of the royalties because there are 3 key authors on there now. Brian Foy took over a ton of the work, and Tom Phoenix wrote all the examples and exercises and collaborated with me in the beginning. So we all got a good chunk of the 10%. So I got 3% essentially, 4% of retail. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, I think that puts
Not a good
us
way
at
to get
the-
rich.
yeah,
I
puts
think
us
we're
at the
wrapped up, aren't we?
end
We're
of the
done.
stream.
Yep, end of the stream.
Oh, people trying to get questions in. What do you think?
Next
You
week.
have-
Come back next week. We need question people right at the beginning of next week. So you
think
can
of your
get right in
questions,
first.
and maybe
Yeah.
I'll put something together for next week.
And we're going to do the compiler show. This
do
is going
something
to be
like a
fun.
compiler. That might be fun.
Yeah,
Right.
that'll be great. All
See you
right.
then.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good
Thanks
show.
for being here.
Bye.